Transportation, trains, taxis, etc.
I mean, that was always goated. It's still goated, and
It's more goated.
it's more goated than every time I go back to America.
Every time I go back home to Australia, I'm just like, man, how did I live like this? It's actually insane. Like, you know, when people say
I dread taking a train anywhere else.
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
I just dread public transport anywhere else, I feel. Like, okay, buses can be a hit or a miss sometimes. At least, I don't know how it's like in the UK, but
It's pretty good in the UK.
it's pretty good. Yeah.
Comparative to like other countries.
You're from Brighton, so I feel like it's better there. Wales, not so great.
Oh, really?
It might just not show up.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Brighton's pretty good. London's pretty good.
Yeah,
with
London's
that.
great. London's it's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys have definitely been taking a lot more taxis, though, I've noticed.
I have been taking more taxis lately, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm lazy.
Tax deductible, isn't it? If
It is tax deductible. Yeah, the one thing that's kind of annoying about Seeker is that trying to get that shit to my accountant was fucking tough.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to like get it, like I know that the fucking mobile Suica app is a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially getting the proof and then on the taxi is super easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that that's the main reason, but
Yeah.
the main reason is that I'm lazy. That also just helps justify my laziness.
Yes.
enough.
That part of me has changed.
Right.
Most definitely. I take a lot more taxis, but
Yeah, maybe I'm just fucking stingy, but if I can avoid taking the taxi, I will avoid taking a taxi.
I think, because where I live, oftentimes I'll click somewhere and it'll be like 35-minute train, 20-minute taxi. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go shower for 50 minutes and enjoy a coffee, and then I'll get my taxi.
like the big difference between me 5 years ago and me now is, you know, there's no way to go around it. I'm in a lot better place here.
We're rich, Joey. I'm rich.
I have more money.
I'm rich, and I'm tired of pretending I'm not.
Does that mean that I go out and buy a fucking Gucci bag every day?
Yeah.
Yes. No. Okay. No.
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 What?
No.
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 You don't?
No.
I don't. But there are two places that my spending habits has changed.
Yeah.
Number one is, yes, taking taxis. Yes. But you know, with that, I can kind of like justify it with like this is me being like pure cope justifying this, even though I know that I'm just fucking lazy. I'm like, yeah, but it's like more convenient for like the tax thing because as Connor said, you know,
we find ways to cope.
Yeah. And if I'm traveling somewhere for work, then the taxi just makes sense. You know, it just makes sense.
I see the one thing I just cannot justify, no matter how many times I take the taxi, and no matter how long or short the ride may be, I'm just like, fuck. It's so expensive.
I think if I was going like pretty far out, I don't know, over a 30-minute journey, I think normally it's a train sitch.
Yeah.
Because normally at that point the taxis don't even save that.
Yeah, they don't
much
save you
time.
time, and then you also just spend a shit ton of money.
Yeah, and like, you know, especially, I don't know how it is with you guys back home, but like, if say for example, if I take like an Uber back home in Australia, right? Like, say if it's like a, I don't know, 20-25 minute ride on an Uber, the most I'll pay maybe is like, you know, $30, right?
Yeah.
But a 25-minute taxi ride here in
Pretty
Japan
expensive,
is like double that.
Yeah.
And also, you're also playing like life roulette, because sometimes you'll hop into a taxi and you're like, oh, this person doesn't know where they're going, even with the GPS.
The time when I often find that taxis get expensive, and when I'm like, you should probably reconsider it, is that if you need to go on a highway at any point, you're probably getting into the point where it's getting pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So I would just look on Google Maps. Like, there are some journeys, like for example, me getting to the office here, it's like a 10-minute taxi. I normally cycle it if I can.
Yeah.
Or a 30-minute train. Because the trains, I have to go back
you have
out
to, like,
and come back
triangulate.
in, and then I have to walk back. So it's kind of like, I'm like, you know what? we may be early. I'm just gonna fucking take a taxi. Fuck this.
No, okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? If I was put in that same position, I would also.
But I also have the
taxi.
luxury of that choice, right? Like, I think like when I moved to Saitama, it was, you know, I would
You had
never
to take the train.
Yeah, I would take the train.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if we everyone wanted to go to Tokyo, I remember
like
we
an hour
go,
taxi.
Yeah, we go for a night out, and then we all had to like communally agree to the night out. Yeah, because if one of us wanted,
because we could not take a singular taxi.
No,
we'd have to like split it.
Yeah,
because it was like $120. So it was like, fuck me. Like, if one of us took that, it would be $120.
And if we just missed the last train, we'd be like, okay, guys, we're all splitting this bill, right? Because I am paying this bill.
Yeah, that's the only time where I'm like, fuck this. I'm taking the taxi is when if I'm at a night out in Tokyo or somewhere where I'm like quite far away from home, and I know it's going to be more than like $100 on the taxi. But it's also like, 2 in the morning. The first train doesn't arrive for another 2.5 hours. I'm just like, I'm too drunk to make sane choices. I'm just like, fuck it. I just want to be in bed. I will pay any amount of money to get to bed.
It was fun back in the day having to be like, nah, fuck it, I'll stay up till 4. But now I'm like, no, I'm going back. Okay.
I can't do it anymore.
Okay. And that is the part that I definitely appreciate. That that has changed about me. It is the privilege of having freedom of choice.
True. I mean, how many times do you guys ever get to the position now where you're out till like past last train?
Not much anymore.
Not much. No, a fair amount.
Oh, really?
I think my nights normally go to like 1 or like 12.
Well, that's because you go out with Pete a lot.
Yeah,
Pete, I've noticed when you go out with Pete, it's never like he always has more in the tank.
He does.
You will hit a point where you're like, all right, here's a cool place to end the night. Pete's just like, I got like 5 more bars.
I think I'm slowly rubbing off on Pete because I'm like, Pete, it's 12:30. We got to start planning to go home. Like we got to call it because I want to work tomorrow. We got to call it.
That's true.
But yeah, it depends. Honestly, the biggest factor I've noticed in my own personal life when the night will go long or not is when did we meet up? Because if we meet up at like 5, I'm gonna be in bed by 11. If we meet up at like 7:30 for dinner, we'll probably be out till like 1 because I feel like it's just so late when you started.
Right.
You didn't really like. I don't know.
I think for me, it also just depends on like the occasion and also maybe just like the vibe, right? Because it's like you can meet up at like, I don't know, 4 in the afternoon because you just happen to have a day off, and you know, if you're with people that you really gel with, then sometimes I'll have those nights where I'm like, shit, man, it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I'll meet up at like 8 p.m. and I'll be like, fuck, it's 11 already. I gotta go home, boys.
Time to fucking go.
Outside, one other thing, just to finalize the taxi conversation, is that I remember in London when I wanted to get a taxi after like 1 a.m. Sometimes it could be a little difficult to get a taxi. Rarely, but it was. I really have to like fucking look for one. And even then, they might not stop for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's true. Whereas here, it's taxi, like everywhere.
In Japan, I walk 2 feet, put my hand up, and 4 taxis are already lining up.
That's true.
Which is pretty nice.
Yeah, and there's the taxi app as well, which is like even if it doesn't appear, you can just call one.
Uber's great here.
I mean, just transport here is just fucking goated, no matter what you say about it.
Before we move on, one other part of the conversation, obviously bullet trains are amazing. Bullet trains are always great.
Of course.
One of the things that is like, I think really underrated is the amount of airports that Japan has and the amount of areas they service. It's not just like the main areas. Like Hokkaido, there's pretty much an airport every like 100 kilometers or so along like every point. So like if you want to go pretty rural Hokkaido, you can get a flight from Tokyo probably like once a day that goes to a very rural part.
Yeah.
And it's good. It'll be on time. It's great service.
I mean, there's also a lot of just prefectures on the mainland that you can't get to with bullet train. As well. Like it's either airport or drive. There's like no other choice.
Yeah, like if you want to go to like
Shimane or something.
Yeah, Shimane or Tottori or Shikoku, like those places you can get to by train, but it's almost like when you go past, I'd say like Hiroshima, like that kind of distance, like 3-hour bullet train. It's always quicker to get a flight. Yeah,
definitely.
No matter where you're thinking of.
And the price isn't that much different because like
normally cheaper than bullet train.
Yeah, because at that point, bullet train is you are basically taking a plane. You're basically buying a plane ticket at that point.
And flying is so easy in Japan because they never had a 9/11, so it's super easy. Domestic,
that's one way to put it.
Bro, domestic, you can really do some gold splits. You can genuinely. I don't recommend it. You can rock up, I'd say semi comfortably 15 minutes for your flight.
I've done that before.
I've done it too.
And it was terrifying at first, but I was like, damn, I'm throwing like 5 minutes.
Because like when they say the flight takes off in Japan at like 10 on an international flight, they'll start boarding like 20, 30 minutes before. Japan, they won't start boarding until like literally like 5 minutes or on the time. They say they're leaving.
So
I've never done every single time.
We don't recommend it.
I only feel confident doing that because I've flown so many times. But if you're going to a rural part where there's only one flight a day, wouldn't recommend it. If you're going to Sapporo, there's like 15 a day. Don't fucking worry about it. You'll be fine.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate public transport in Japan the more I fly out. Even going to Thailand.
Everything here is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So still just as goated.
Still just as
more goated.
Bro, going to Bangkok this Christmas, I was like, damn, they have upped the public transport so much since I lived there 6 years ago. To go into the city now, it used to take me during rush hour like an hour and a half, and now it's like 40 minutes. That's and that is the improvement you're talking about. Meanwhile, here in Japan, it's just like fuck.
Wait, so
there's a train that comes every 2 minutes.
So the improvement I saw was going into Bangkok, taking an hour and a half to like halving that time. But it's still 40 minutes. Huh?
What halved it?
They've just built a lot more infrastructure in terms of public transport.
More lanes.
No.
I saw that Thailand's economically been crushing it lately.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Bangkok's changed a lot since I last lived
Do
there.
we have Kohi?
We do have
my
Kohi.
goodness.
Thailand's crushing it economically. Meanwhile, Japan is like, what do we do?
Conversing. Was it easier to make friends and communicate with people living in Japan before or after 5 years?
Oh, I would assume after, right?
Yeah,
Because
I
you
mean,
know more
5 years.
Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely that naivete that maybe can score you a couple of bonus points where you're like, I just moved here. And people are like, oh, let me show you around. But definitely now, I think, because I feel I never ever get intimidated talking or like feel overwhelmed talking to like a Japanese person.
Although one thing I definitely have noticed now that I have, now that I am an adult living in Japan as opposed to when I was a kid living in Japan, is that when I was a kid living in Japan, I feel like people were more open or more comfortable talking to me if I spoke Japanese, right? Because I was still a child and, they didn't have to dance around to try and, communicate with a child, right? But I feel now that I'm an adult, I get more positive interactions with Japanese people if I pretend I can't speak a word of Japanese.
Yeah.
It's like this weird dichotomy where it's like if I start speaking in Japanese to an adult, there's that moment of like, what the fuck? Like that should not be coming out of your face right now. And then it takes a while for them to adjust to be like, oh wait, no, he may look not Japanese, but he is Japanese. Whereas if I'm just go up and being like, oh hey, sake, right boys? Then they're a lot more like, yeah, this foreigner knows what the fuck he's talking about. Let's go. And I feel like they're more comfortable. And I guess because it's giving them an opportunity to also speak English.
Yeah.
Right? So they, especially in like a drinking setting, they're a lot more comfortable immediately.
Yeah.
As opposed to me speaking in Japanese. Is that the case with you guys?
Funnily enough, yes.
Yeah, right.
But not for Japanese. I have a very, very similar experience whenever I go to Thailand.
Yeah.
And I do that. Whenever, let's say I'm like, talking to a random Thai person, I like start the conversation off in Thai. Like immediately they're like, yo, Hafu? Yo, you are Hafu? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were one of us, but you are Hafu. I'm like, no, I'm not a Hafu. I just grew up abroad. Okay, I'm sorry, my accent's a bit weird.
Oh, I think it's kind of like the vibe of when you get to talk to like the new kid or something.
Yeah,
where it's like he doesn't know anything.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of fun that you both have this kind of no knowledge of each other.
Yeah,
and then when you speak the language or like fluently, I think there's that kind of like
yeah,
you know,
he already
everything.
knows.
You
Yeah.
know everything.
Yeah, right.
There's no like fun to be had here. Because I've also noticed, and I was thinking about this the other day, when I'm hanging out with Pete and Pete talks to people in Japanese, he's so good at making people feel so comfortable and engaged. And one thing that I noticed that he does is that, so he'll speak Japanese, but he'll also always talk to them super basic in English. And I think people really like it when they can understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, dude, this is so fun.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. And I realized that today as well, my taxi driver, so this happens a lot too, where I'll go in and I'll speak Japanese, I'll do everything in Japanese, and when I'm leaving, they'll turn around with a big grin on their face and be like, thank you. And I'll be like, thank you too. And then they'll look super happy and pumped, and I'm like,
You're like a Skyrim NPC.
well, because they're like, I can imagine it, the whole drive. They're thinking like, God, I can't wait to fucking. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try.
So hard.
Yeah. So I think
I've had that point where in taxi drivers where I'm speaking to them with Japanese and they just like refuse to reply to me.
The standoff.
The standoff, and I know it's because they're like, no, this is my opportunity. I'm taking this.
I'm about to use all my skill points right now.
Which is fair because like they get less English time than we get Japanese time,
for sure.
right?
Yeah,
so I'm okay with it.
Because I've had so many interactions where I'll get in a taxi and then we'll start conversing in Japanese and then they reply in Japanese and then they'll have this one line that is just like they're giddy to say like, can you put on your seatbelts, please? And it's just like, okay.
I think that's what it is. It's like now, and I think like now that I finally like recognize that, where it's like, oh, I don't have to speak Japanese unless it's a situation where clearly it would be more beneficial for both parties if I could speak Japanese. Like, I'm not going to go to the fucking city hall and being like, where do I sign the paper? Like, I'm not going to do that, obviously.
Yeah.
But if it's in like a casual conversation, like I've noticed that like so many Japanese people are so eager to use English that I'm like, well, then I'll give them the satisfaction to use that English because I don't know, they probably have way less of an instance to be able to use that as opposed to me using Japanese.